Good morning. In keeping with the British theme that we have started, today I introduce the Lee Enfield No. 4 Mark I rifle. This one was made in 1942. They were introduced to the British in the 1930s, and it was incorporated and taken in as their No. 1 rifle that they used during World War II. It's a bolt action. That's the same thing, magazine, 10 rounds. You can use a clip or you can put them in individually. It has a brass butt plate with a trap door. We'll have to get the trap door open later, but for keeping of the cleaning equipment that they had. Has swivels back and front. Does not have a stacking swivel. They did away with that. I think that part of it was financial. You know, when you're putting on one, maybe two of those stacking swivels, that's fine. But when you're putting on millions of them, that costs money. The wood does not go all the way down to the end like it did in the No. 1. It only goes down part way. You can see that's the Bayonet Lugs. We'll show how the bayonet goes on here in a bit. Still has the sight protector, the bands, the wood, etc. Now, one thing that I didn't show when I did the last Enfield, and I'm going to show you here in a minute. This one here. Oh, it's difficult to get the bolt out. I thought it took a while to learn how to do it. In normal rifles, in other rifles, you pull it back, you pull the trigger, and the bolt comes out. Well, for this one, you have to have the bolt head down, and there's a little spring thing that you push so that you can rotate the bolt head. Then you have to take and move the rear sight, and then you can get the bolt head out. The Enfield bolt heads are kind of screwed on, and you have to take them off if you want to get the firing pin out. Of course, there's the extractor right here. But the point that I wanted to make was it only has one lug for when you push it in. It turns and the lug turns. So what they did was they have another lug in the back. This goes back when you pull back and you put it in, so it gives you the two lugs. The Italian one that we did, the Carcano, has the two lugs up front, and it has no lug in the back. So that's what you'll find. For me, anyway, the guns that I have, the Mausers also have a different lug. Actually, I guess it's the third lug in the back. But that's the bolt for the same design that they have for all of the Enfields. Now, what we're going to do is we'll talk about the sight here. Remember when I first had my son's gun, the sight that came with it was the L-shaped. Let's see if I can find it here. The L-shaped sight, and it went. Let's put this down. You'd flip it, and it would be 300 yards, 600 yards, 300 yards, 600 yards. And that the reason that they did that was because the production of the rifles was so quick, they didn't have time to mill the rear sight that they had. So that what they did was they put this on, and they called this their battle sight, and it was temporary. Then, once they finally actually got around to having enough of these guns, they came up with this rear sight here. This is a rear sight that put it down. It's got your peephole so you can look down. Or for longer distance, you flip it up, and there's a little knob at the top here. And you turn it, and it moves this peephole up and down, up and down. And this one, I believe, goes to 800 yards, I think. No, it goes longer than that. they say it goes up to 1,200 yards. So that was the thing. Then they decided that to mill these sights was too expensive and it was too complicated. So they came up with one that looked similar to this, and instead of a wheel on the top, it had these little squeezy things that you squeeze, and you could move it up and down, and still get the same results. But that's the That's the number 4, and actually the number 5 rear sights. Sorry about that. And it has its safety on the side here. Pull it back, push it forward. Trying to think now. Let's see. They have for the bayonet. Oh, why do I go from a number 1 to a number 4? You know, on the Enfields. You say, well, what happened to number 2 and number 3? That's interesting. The number 2 Enfield is actually a .38 revolver, and they call that the number 2. I've only seen one. My son has one, so it's interesting. It's a revolver it's a break open revolver like that. You put your 38s in and shoot. The 38 I don't think is a very powerful round to have, but I guess for close in, whatever, 38's going to be good enough. Then for the number 3, they came out in 2013. They came out with an experimental version. They made a couple hundred of them, and what they were going to try to do is they were going to try to come up with a better gun than the number 1 that they had. And they were checking to see for ammo, you know, maybe they could have a different round, maybe they could have a different whatever. And so that was the pattern 13. The British didn't use model 13, 1913. They used pattern. Same thing for their bayonets are in the pattern, whatever. So, you know, different people, the Chinese use type. So you have a Chinese type 24 instead of a model 24. Well, the British had pattern. So then they came out with the pattern 1914. And they thought this was going to be their new rifle and it was going to be fine. And they started building it in England, and they were having a lot of problems, production problems. So they decided they were going to contract it out to the United States. So we had companies, Remington, and who else was doing it? They had 2 or 3 U.S. companies that were making them. And, well, they were being produced. The problem was there was little in line of quality control, in that each one was a little bit different. Each company that was producing the rifles, they were just a little bit different, and because of that, they weren't interchangeable, the parts. So that was a problem that they had there too. So they scrapped the 1914, which was the Enfield number 3, and then they came up with, and most people that have heard of the Enfield 1917, which was the one that was actually used in World War I by the forces. The 17 and the number 1 was also still being produced in India, and so that way they had their rifles. Then in the 30s, like I said, along came the number 4 Enfield, and the number 4 Enfield was the one that was used for World War II. So that clears that up, I think. As I always wondered, you know, well, hey, that's great. What happened to the number, the other numbers? So there you are. I'm going to open up the trap door here, and it has a cleaning kit. Well, it doesn't have a cleaning kit. I'm going to get one of those for my son. But it has an oiler. The difference is, if you notice, the oiler on the number 1 was brass. Brass costs money. So this one is made out of plastic. They had plastic, and it's the same. It's a lot lighter and a lot cheaper to produce. I don't think I mentioned that these rifles were made in England, obviously, But they were also made in Canada at a place up in Canada, and they were produced by the Savage Company here in the United States, and they were all produced in 303 British, and they're all identical, and the parts are all interchangeable. The place up in Canada was called the Long Branch Arsenal, and that's that's where they're produced, and they're all like I said, the same rifle, just made in a different place. These rifles, some of the ones that were made in Canada, they would test them and find out the quality of the rifle barrel, and the ones that were of high quality, they sent those back to England, where they were outfitted and used for sniper rifles. Um, that's how good the quality these are. The rifle is heavier than the number one. This weighs almost 10 pounds, which is pretty heavy for a rifle. The British were not happy with that, the troops, because of the fact that it weighed so much. But the reason that it's heavier is because they put a heavier barrel in it. And they said the heavier barrel would be to increase accuracy. And I guess I'm sure that it did. Anybody that's seen target rifles, where they have a nice heavy barrel on them, and it helps with the recoil. But apparently lugging this all over Europe and wherever else you're lugging it, it's heavy, which is, they said, it's about a pound more than the number one. I don't really have anything else on to say about it. If you have any questions or whatever, just let me know, and I'll try to answer them. Again, thank you very much for watching.